Welcome to Courageous Parenting Summit, transforming challenges into opportunity. I'm Filza Jabin, mother of three beautiful children, teen and parents transformational leadership coach. And our vision is to empower parents and children by building connection with love. Today we have here with us beautiful Alex-Lianne. Welcome, Alex.
Welcome,
Hi.
Alex-Lianne. So, I'm Edith Wolek. I am Amazon best-selling book author and transformational leadership coach, and also a mother of three beautiful and clever children. And I am so excited to welcome Alex-Lianne to our summit.
Thanks for having me, Edith and Filza.
Welcome. So, Alex-Lianne Carter is a renowned neurohacking expert and leadership breakthrough coach dedicated to helping high-achieving women leaders break free from burnout, fear, and self-doubt. Through her signature Irresistible Bold Leader method, Alex combines neuroscience and leadership and productivity principles to empower her clients to overcome mental and emotional blocks, elevate their performance, and thrive authentically. Wow, wow, wow. What a beautiful bio. And it's only part of it. So it's super excited. We will share the full bio with our audience who signed up in our summit. And we have so many topics to talk about. Can you tell us a little bit of history of your motherhood and neuroscience and leadership?
Yeah. So I love how you introduce yourselves with about your children. I have two beautiful daughters who are a year and a half and 4 years old. And it I would say a pivotal moment for me in my life is the moment where I was really looking at my life and thinking this isn't sustainable. We knew that my husband and I were looking at starting a family like in the near future. And I would just look at my life and realize like this just, I'm constantly on this hamster wheel and looking at how I'm living and how I'm feeling. This isn't sustainable to go and start a family. And, I was kind of on this journey. I would probably say from that moment about a year of like this rust on my mind of like how do I change this? How do I shift this? And through the process of this, I actually ended up what I thought was the peak of my career, experience a complete meltdown, burnout, which I had led me to being off work for 6 months. And right after the burnout happened is actually when I found out I was pregnant with Abigail. And now I'm pregnant. And so I'm preparing to become a mother while I'm also like recovering from this burnout. And this led me down a path of, the self-discovery, a path to become, this master certified neuro coach on my road to fix myself and to be in the best mental and physical state to give birth to my first daughter. And so on this road of recovery, it led me down path of leadership and just the self-development journey. And then, women high achievers started to reach out to me and just ask me like, can you help me? Can you serve me? And it's just really fascinating, right? To see how all the events played out. And then now, because I'm a mom as well, and with my young daughters, I'm really fascinated in studying so much about the brain, the impact it has on us, right? And really unpacking so that women who are experiencing self-doubt and fears can really step into their courage and take bold action while also raising that next generation of leaders who also have that confidence and have that courage and have that self-worth to thrive and not be allowing society impact the decisions we make with the actions we take and the results we generate. And so it's very fascinating because I work at both ends, right? Raising the next generation. We just spent some time in the leadership room together, raising our next generation of leaders, and then working with a lot of high achieving women and just sort of seeing at different levels the role that the mind plays and the subconscious in our daily actions and decisions.
Incredible. So, looking into the topic of the interview which you have chosen, it's just beautiful, irresistible, bold parents. So, can we talk a little bit about it. How has neuroscience influenced your coaching business, your parenting life, and why it is important, essential for parents to have it?
Yeah. So, and I can kind of lead, like, I'll explain like the way that I redefine bold. Up until a few years ago, I saw bold as something that was very ego driven. And I was actually avoiding being bold because to me, bold equated to burnout because it was very lonely, like something that was driven in me. And it was one of the thoughts I had that led me to burnout was that leadership was only at the top. Now, put that in there with parenting, right? Maybe parenting can feel very lonely or can be very challenging. So, our thoughts really do play such an impact in, as I said earlier, the decisions we make, the actions we take, and then the results we generate. So, if we believe that leadership is lonely, we're going to create that. If we believe that parenting is hard, we're going to create that. And so, when I look at bold and how I redefine bold, the B is really about your being. It's who you are, it's your identity. So it really starts with how do you see yourself as a parent? What are, and that follows in then, with your vision. What is the vision you have for your life, for your children, for yourself as a parent, and how you want to lead your family and your children? And then it's about being loving. The L is the loving, it's being authentic, it's being vulnerable, it's being honest, it's being open. It's also being able to receive support. And then the D thing is taking risks. It's the daring. That's where the neuroscience comes in, because I'm sure many of you out there listening are probably looking at how maybe you were raised, and maybe you're like, well, I don't want to raise my kids like that. One thing is that that's great because we have a vision. However, where's the focus? Is the focus on not raising our children the way we were raised? Here's the thing: if what we resist persists. So if we focus on not raising our children the way we were raised, we're actually going to end up raising our children the way we were raised, because that's what we're focusing on. When we focus on growth, so we want to shift our focus to our vision and how we want to raise our family, and then defining that. And that's why I said earlier, it starts with we see ourselves in our identity, because our identity is impacted in how we grew up. That's actually in our subconscious without us really realizing it. So for the parents out there listening, I would invite you to start with, how do you see yourself as a parent? How do you describe who you want to be? I had this moment. I remember Abby was about 10 months old, and I found myself often saying, man, I really wish, I had the time I had before her. I really wish. And I was in that past wishing, and I caught myself in that moment, right? My belief. And I was like, whoa, hold on, pause. That's in the past. I get to focus on the future. And in that moment, I redefined my time. I redefined me being a mom. And I remember doing the same thing when I found out about Abigail. I took a moment to now define myself as a parent of two girls, because and I notice this a lot, especially with my clients who are parents. Again, it's easy to operate from what we know, and we also get to prepare ourselves for the future and what we're creating. And so, if you are expecting another baby, it's to really look at not just you as a parent of now being a mom of more, or a parent, sorry, of more children. What about your children? Because for Abby, up until that point, she was the only child, and now she gets to be the big sister. So even having conversations like that with your children, or even through pivotal moments of life, even with your children, when they're going off to school, when they're going off to college, before maybe they're getting married, right? Like we experience lots of identity shifts throughout life. And that's why it's important that I found to take moments to really connect with that and this goes for anything, right? Like even if you're wanting to implement a new workout routine, right? You get to embody the identity of somebody who gets up and does work out in the morning, because up until this point, you only know this. And our brain doesn't know the difference between reality and rehearsal. And so this is the power of leaning into, what is it, like, who is it you want to be? How do you want to feel with your kids? And really taking a moment to just really connect with that and write that out. And then that leads into the vision of what do you want to create with your family, right? How do you want to spend your time together? What do you want your day to look like with your kids and your family? And not just your day, but your week, your year, if you want to travel. And then it's about being who you get to be. It's about taking the risk and maybe getting uncomfortable, maybe having uncomfortable conversations with people. If you notice that people in your life are not fully aligned with what you want to have for your children. I want to share this moment with you. So I guess I know I'm doing a lot of talking. So, ask me questions, but, it was a couple summers ago, and I noticed, again, because my brain is always primed to really be aware of this, I noticed that a lot of instruction around my daughter was about all the things she couldn't do. And that actually really creates confusion, especially for a young, a young developing brain. And I noticed that. And I actually had this is where I was courageous. I took courageous action and spoke to somebody and said, I've just been listening. I noticed a lot of what was being shared with Abigail's all the things she can't do. So my question is, what can she do? And this is really, really powerful because here's the reality. Our brains are not fully developed until we're 25. And even as an adult, we are primed to listen to the question that we're like a question that we're given or information that we're told. So if we're told we can't do something, the brain's going to be like, well, what can I do? And this is where we want to shift our language in what are things that they can do. And it's I see it as a bit of a game, and I'm always noticing, like, I'll say like, oh, like, don't take the toy from your sister, right? And I realize I'm like, okay, hold on, wait a second, right? But it's automatic. It's so automatic. And part of it is because of the cognitive dissonance, which really is, sorry, not cognitive dissonance, the negativity bias. And essentially, it's really like how we're 9 times more negative than we are positive. Like, it's just a natural state. So naturally, we're probably saying all the things that we don't want our kids to do. And we get to mindfully, consciously realize, okay, actually, that's not going to serve them. So what do I want them to do? And so even in that moment, I'm like, okay, so if I don't want to say, don't take the toy, what do I want her to do? I want her to play with her sister, or I want her to grab her a new toy, right? And again, this is like, I feel with parenting about being an irresistible parent, it's the conscious awareness of how are we speaking to our kids and how are we speaking to ourselves. So I don't know if you've noticed with your children, they're probably the best mirror example of how we behave and how we act. And so I feel like it's a beautiful gift. Those, like, I mean, as parents, like those that don't have parents don't have that same intimate level of that mirror reflection. And so it's that's why I say it does really get to be fun when you can look at it from that sense of interesting. Okay, so my kid's picking this up from me. Is this what I want? And knowing about the gift of neuroplasticity, what that basically means is that there's hope that you can change it, right? Like if we feel like, oh my goodness, my kid's going to act like this or believe this or whatever forever, even about ourselves, we have the power to consciously make the shifts and to commit. Like, I think it's really important. It takes roughly 67 days to build a new neural pathway. What that essentially means is just it's building a new highway to create the result we want to create. So if you see if you see a behavior, you see something that isn't working as a parent, consciously make a decision to shift it and then stay committed. I always think of sleep training my daughter. It's always like, what's the why behind why you want them to sleep through the night, and commit to 14 days, because there are moments that are going to get challenging. And so I kind of take that model, even though I know it takes 67 days for it to become automatic. I use that model in anything with my kids. If I notice a behavior, if I notice something, again, tied to the vision, I commit myself, pick one little thing and commit myself for 14 days, because it takes time to develop any new habits, any new skills. And we consciously get to, see my language shift, be aware of it so that we can consciously lean into whatever the thing is to create the result we want to create. Like, for example, sleep training.
That was super beautiful. And I would add, like, to have a grace for ourselves, because it's easy to set the habits, especially for high achieving parents and leaders in this world. We like to create a new habit, but we get if we make a mistake, then we would either do a doubt or self beat up or whatever. But we get to give ourselves grace and keep on practicing and keep on being aware of what's whether it's working, whether it's not working, whether we get to shift it. I love conversation about the habits. And a lot of high achieving parents, they put a lot of pressure on themselves. So what are some of the, and sometimes we put a lot of pressure and we think everything is okay. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, everything is running so smoothly. I can get everything. Everything is working fine. I got all my ducks in a row. It's perfect. But, and what are some early signs of like a burnout? What are some signs that our parents can pick up, even though they think everything is perfect?
I guess the question is, when you're looking at the perfect, what does it mean about the being perfect? Because I like one of my big, and it's always part of like the journey, is being really committed to the intention, the feeling versus the mechanic, right? And then it needing to look a certain way. This has really been, and I'm being honest and vulnerable, like it's not always easy. It really isn't,
No.
you know. Um, it's I think one is the conscious parenting and being really clear on the vision, because it's so easy. And that's what I'm asking, like, where's the perfect coming from? Because it's really easy to look at society and look at how society is defining something, even just defining parenthood or your family, especially, or people around you. But when you own, again, how you see yourself as a parent, and I love how you talked about the grace piece, Edith, because that goes in the identity, right? Getting to be a parent who gives themselves grace. That's why even like the 14-day kind of, let's call it a rule, because it's in those moments that you get to give yourself grace. So like it's going to take a little while. It's not going to happen overnight. And so there's that piece of the permission, and just like question of curiosity in terms of, where's the perfect coming from? Who's the one that's saying it's perfect? Is it you, or is it an external? Because I think we easily get caught up in that, and looking at, okay, what's going on into us internally? Like, how are we feeling? Are we feeling anxious? What about it is making us feel anxious? Are we feeling embarrassed? What about it is, are we feeling embarrassed? Because sometimes it's not, it's right. The thing is not the thing, right? That's just the external experience that's giving us some insight internally of like what's going on here. And it's a beautiful opportunity to really look at, is it a story? Is it something you heard even as a kid? Is again this external expectation that we have? And I am constantly working through this, right? So my eldest is very independent, and which I celebrate, because it's so beautiful to see how independent she is at 4 years old. Part of this independence is also dressing herself. Now, mom, who likes, me, I do like to, I like to have things that are matching or things like that. So first of all, it's funny because she will enroll me into wear something because things match. Now, they match, like the colors might match, but I might not think that it is, let's just maybe I wouldn't put that outfit together, right? And I choose to empower her in her choices and her decisions. And I let her go to school like that. And I'll be honest with you, trust me, in my mind, I go through, oh my goodness, what are people like? And it's just interesting to see where that comes up, because yes, right? The perfect, that the looking good, I definitely experienced that. And so this is where I go back to, what's the intention? Because the mechanic is okay, how it's all put together, and like, what are other people thinking, right? Like, I mean, for many, that's going to be a default. And I go back, what's the intention here? My intention is, I don't want my daughter to grow up with this perfection. I don't want her to grow up feeling things have to look a certain way. I actually want her to own her creativity. I want her to own her confidence. And I notice, if I were to come around and be like, well, and my automatic whatever comes up, I'm not setting her up for success for the future. And so this is again, I call the game, and maybe there's a different word for this, but it's a game, because in games, it's, or it's a science, not my child's a science experiment, but I just mean, is like, it's all a part of the process of the journey. And I go back again to who I get to be as a mom, right? As the individual. What's my vision? My vision is to raise a daughter who is not trying to conform to society, And here I am as the mom trying to get it right. And so this is what I go through. And so that's, a moment that I can share that we often experience, like even today, was doing her hair earlier. In my experience, there was unmatching colors, but she picked those colors and I got to surrender that those are the colors that she wanted. Now, I understand that there's going to be moments in life that perhaps she might make certain decisions that don't serve her. But again, it goes back to the intention, for her to have the freedom to choose how she wants to dress. There's no harm there. There's no risk of safety. She's not going to get hurt, right? These are the things that I also kind of like scan through, right? Because you could be listening to this and be like, yeah, but I mean, if I do it with my kid, it could lead to something that was not safe. If in any moment where it's not safe, that's a different story. And then I take it as a teachable moment to help her understand why in this situation. A really massive shift I've had in my parenting, especially with the amount of work I do with high performing leaders, is asking questions. I get it to come from her, her solution. I will admit sometimes it takes a little longer. And maybe we don't always have time to ask the question and get our kids to come up with the answer. But I will say that it's so much more powerful because then it comes from them and you're not trying to they don't feel like they're trying to be told what to do. And especially at a young age, right? Where they want to feel empowered like that. And even our teenagers, right? I've got 16 plus years working in schools. I'm a former educator and I've spent a lot of time working with teenagers and they want it to come from them. They have enough adults in their life trying to tell them what to do, right? So if you want to enroll them, it's about having the conversations and being curious. And so kind of this I mean, I do follow little rules, right? Because it helps me, gives me the intention of the foundations, like asking 5 questions before giving a comment.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's going back to the vision. And I have an example, a few months ago, my daughter wanted to open the window and it was starting to get really cold out. So I didn't want her to open the window because I didn't want it to enter the cold in. So I started, what was the goal? What was the end in mind for her not to open the window? So I'm like, okay, so why do I not want her to open the window? Because it's cold outside. So I asked her the question, what's the temperature outside right now? Or what do you think it is? Or if we open the window, what do you think is going to happen? And then she came to the solution herself. It was like, oh, it's cold. And we, led that way. And so I said, is it a good idea to open the window right now? And she's like, oh, actually, no, mommy, it's not. Right. So I could have been like, don't open the window. It's cold outside. But I just asked her, I just flipped it around.
Yeah.
Again, all of these things, it takes time. It's the conscious parenting to go through. But if you go, going back to identity, if you define your identity as someone who is a conscious parent, who gives themselves grace, who really leads by the vision that you want to create for your family and your children, right? Get clear on the vision. It's a great idea to have a conversation with your partners to talk about, right? Like, how do you want to raise your kids together? How do you want to show up? And even have parenting identity, as a couple, what does that look like for you? If you, are in a partnership, right? And then really just leaning into the loving. With high achieving parents, it's about performance, right? And it's about results. And when we can shift into our heart and really connect one-on-one and be curious and be able to surrender to the expectation and all the doing and all of these things, it really is truly magical what can happen. Right. And so that's just sort of my invitation. And as I said, it might lead to some uncomfortable conversations with people even in your life. It might lead to, letting your kid go out in an outfit that you might not go out in public in, and here's the thing, if that is the case, my challenge is, what is it? Why don't you join your kid and maybe put on an outfit that you might not originally, because it's in those moments that you learn so much about your subconscious, about your belief system, about what is really impacting, right? Your daily actions, decisions. 95% of our daily action decisions come from the subconscious. Imagine 95. And I mean, there's some science that says 97. There's a lot going on autopilot that are impacting us as parents, right? And so, it's just that place of curiosity and then really just checking in, right? Like, am I really truly showing up right now as the parent that I want to be? Am I
Yes.
really making decisions right now for my kids, for how I want to raise them? Right? Again, focusing always on the future, which is that it's a shift, because most likely maybe up until now you've been focusing on what you don't want to create, but what we focus on grows and what we resist persists. So why not focus out into your vision and what you want to experience, how you want to feel as a parent, and what you get to create with your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're saying like 90% of our reactions are coming from subconscious mind, and that's like, if I'm controlling the situation, it's coming from fear. Like, no, I'm
Yeah.
letting
Yeah.
go. I want to control everything. So 90% of my actions are coming through fear. So I really
Yeah.
want to ask you a question around this. How will you help parents into recognizing and break free from their deep ingrained fear and self-doubt so that they can just let it go and go with the flow? Like, what will you suggest them?
Yeah. It's really identifying what is the fear, right? So fear is false evidence appearing real. But it, again, it's like it's that, so I keep saying cognitive dissonance, which cognitive dissonance, by the way, is an internal battle between like basically the heart and mind, right? Like intuitively what you want, but what your mind's telling you, right? Which often leads to anxiety. So if you are experiencing anxiety as a parent, there's probably like there's a mismatch and probably like what you like how maybe you want a parent, but like maybe what society is defining. So that's why, again, it's really getting clear on like your vision and how you want to raise your kids. So because I kept saying that word and I'm like, I just want to share what that is. But it's a negativity bias, right? Which is like fear is safety, right? So when it comes to our brain, there's like three home bases. We want to be safe and secure. We want to feel loved and accepted, and we want to feel worthy and enough. And at
Yeah.
any moment in time, when we feel like any of those three are like in jeopardy, our brain's always going to go back to default safety, what's familiar. And so without even realizing it, for many, and I mean, I'm included in that in many moments, fear is what's safe, because it's gonna have you be held back. You're right. And that's where the courage comes in, because you got to be courageous enough to take action to show your brain that there's not a tiger waiting for you in the cave, right? But that's literally what's going on in your brain. Now, I know that sounds kind of funny, but that's literally actually what's happening. The way that your brain is wired and built is to protect you from being hurt, from being, judged, not liked, not accepted, right? Because that's really what it wants. So in those moments, it's going back to really, I mean, there is a sense of being still, because you get to you get to slow down to be able to connect enough with what's going on internally. But it's just to be like, okay, what is the fear protecting me from? What is it I don't want to feel? Or I don't want to, what am I avoiding?
Mm.
And just being really curious on like, what is defining the fear?
Mm. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about the neuroscience part? How can our parents empower themselves and their children who have ADHD, who have mental health illness, who have all different autoimmune illnesses? How can you give us a few tips of combining and applying neuroscience into our practice and parenting?
Again, goes back to your identity as a parent, right? How are you defining, and how do you even see yourself? Like, how do you see your child? Because it's really easy if your child is neurodivergent to go along with, okay, this is what, like, how society might define them. You help them build their identity, and you work with that. You see them for the loving, brilliant child that they are. You see the gifts in them. I think a really good practice is to actually practice through saying the gifts I see in my child is this. Same for you. The gift I see myself as a parent is this. Stay focused on the positive, because underneath any neuro diagnosis, there's a powerful, sorry, I get emotional. I've worked with a lot of neurodivergent children, and there's a lot of gifts. And if you lean into the gifts and you work with them in partnership, they will flourish. And so it's really like it's educating yourself. educate yourself on how they learn, educate themselves on how they thrive, focus on how they thrive. And in those moments when they're challenging, right, take a moment to just honestly acknowledge yourself and breathe. And I say that because if you can take a moment in those moments that are more challenging and you're going through breathing and you know going through it on you, you model it for them. Right. And so when we talk about the neuroscience, it's the habits, but we get to model it first as parents. We get to really be mindful as well and ask ourselves, check in. Okay, how I'm acting this moment, is this serving my kid? And also be an advocate. Work with the schools, work with the teachers, embrace the support, get help. I'm not saying like get help, but allow yourself to receive support. Parenting itself, there is no manual. And now if you have a child who is neurodivergent, I mean, luckily I will say there are so many more resources out there, but work with and celebrate and highlight the strengths. I will also say, and I know this is not the case for everywhere, but I honestly would say to look at the school you're sending your kid to. There are schools that are sometimes a better fit. And so that's why it's just being open to really like asking yourself, like, how does my kid thrive? What does my kid need? And supporting them and being in those environments that supports that. And it's okay. Like, I even remember with Abby, we tried a couple different types of like, we wanted her to do, football, soccer, and it wasn't working. We wanted her to do gymnastics. It wasn't working. It didn't work. And I got to be okay with that. Right? Because it was about me wanting her to enjoy this, and they weren't good fits. And so sometimes it's going to be a bit of trial and error to find something that does work and does fit for the kid. But I said earlier about being in partnership with your kid, especially if they are neurodivergent, meet them where they're at. And honestly, there are so many amazing resources and books out there to educate yourself. And as you said earlier, Edith, it's about giving yourself grace, because it's like, I mean, sometimes I feel like becoming a parent is like going back to school. And you learn something, and then guess what? 6 months down the road, they're going to change because they're going to grow and they're going to be at new milestones. So seek out local resources. I mean, actually, we're going to a parenting session tomorrow night, right? So seek out resources, join groups, work with parenting coaches like Edith and Phil's at, join, be surrounded by other parents, right? And hold your kids up, right? In their gifts, in their greatness. And consciously integrate that, as I said, to acknowledge the gifts that you see in your kids, because they are brilliant. That is one amazing thing about neurodivergent children. And they are truly brilliant if you allow them the space to thrive and to understand that, you know what, many school systems are just not built. They're just not built like that. Right. And that's okay too, because you can still work with the schools and the teachers and your child to still help them thrive. I think this could be a whole other discussion, guys, because I have a whole background. Like my master's degree is in educational technology with a focus on neurodivergent children. And so, yeah, I don't know if Phil's and Edith actually knew that about me. So I have spent most of my career, teaching and training teachers, even just how to integrate technology in the classroom, assistive learning, yeah, that's a whole other topic we could talk about. But it really comes to, again, some of the 4 things I said earlier. It's about identity for you as a parent, and even how you see your child, having a vision for your child and yourself as a family, connecting, being vulnerable, honest, and loving, receiving support, and taking the risk, being courageous, and maybe having some difficult conversations, but being an advocate for your kid and their success and the brilliant and amazing child that they are.
I'm sure our audience will appreciate support if they want to help at school or start introducing some new skills, new classes. Maybe we have parents advocates like this, advocates who are very ambitious and are supporting at school. I definitely get a lot of messages from my children's school. Oh, do you want to be the president? Do you want to come in and volunteer for your school? So maybe some of the parents want to change that kind of system and start implementing new ways of educational technology and all of that. So yeah, feel free to connect with Alex. She's the expert on this. And as we're coming to close of this interview, can you tell us your amazing gift that you have for our clients, our
Yeah.
audience?
I have my top no productivity hacks for high performing female leaders and parents. And it really is just tools and really they're neuro hacks because they're not just regular productivity, but it's really looking at the neuroscience behind the implementation of some of these things that will an extension of even some of the things I've talked about today and what that actually looks like to actual practical application to help you set up your day and your time so you can thrive and, be unleashed unstoppable, which is the name of my podcast as well. So if you want to subscribe to that and learn more about the neuroscience behind, just you as being a leader.
Thank you for sharing all these things. I'm sure this is going to help our audience a lot, and all the details will be given just below this interview. So just click on it and reach out to Alex. Thank you, Alex, for your generosity, for your time. It's lovely being here with you and talking so much about, and I'm feeling so empowered and like letting go of my fear is my next step, which I'm going to do as a parent because all the time I'm in the mode of controlling and like I'm coming from the place of fear. So thank you for
It's the trust and surrender. It's really stepping into that. And I continuously practice it and implement it, but it really comes back to when the fear is showing up, it's like, what's missing here? And it's on the other side that it's trusting and surrendering that it is all going to work out, right? So
Yes.
I'm excited for you to Phil's to work on like to get to that next step, right, in your parenting and leaning into trust and surrender.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. Really
You're welcome.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye for now.